Hello, this is Orlando Mayor Buddy Dyer.
Welcome home.
Soar into tower. We are ready for takeoff.
Por favor, manténganse alejado de las puertas.
Hey, it's Amy from DVC Clubhouse.
Hey Clubbers, it's Scott from DVC Clubhouse.
Hey, it's Kathleen from DVC Clubhouse.
Welcome aboard. It's Phil from DVC Clubhouse.
Hey, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Debrief Podcast brought to you by DVC Clubhouse. This is Amy, joined as always by my co-hosts, Kathleen, Scott, and Phil. Hey, guys.
Hey, guys.
Hi guys.
Welcome aboard, guys.
I'm a little bit hoarse still from my weekend, from my my night at Jellyrolls. So if anyone thinks that I sound like I'm
just a
low,
little hoarse.
yeah, my voice sounds a little deep. That's why. Hello.
We're going to be a mess today. You're a little hoarse. Your voice is low. I can't move my jaw all that effectively. This is going to be an interesting episode.
Yeah, and I'm also exhausted. Like I am just completely exhausted from my trip last week because I did college visits last week for during my daughter's spring break and drove all over the South. And we were, sharing a hotel room, which is always fun with a teenage girl who complains about the fact that she can hear me breathe. But we were just up and driving everywhere. And then Jellyrolls was a late night on Saturday night. And then I had to get up. So Jellyrolls, which we are going to get into in a little bit, was the closing night at the boardwalk location was on Saturday night. And I went and I stayed until it closed.
I'm surprised you can actually have this conversation without your voice breaking and tears. I'm proud of you.
Oh, I'll get in. I might get choked up a little bit later. It's been I've thought about it a couple times today and got a little teary eyed, but I didn't go to bed until 2 a.m. And then at 7:30 in the morning, my alarm went off so I could hide Easter eggs in my boardwalk studio for Emma.
You were with a teenager. Let us go back to the fact that you were vacationing with a teenager and you woke up to hide Easter eggs.
A 17-year-old who was like, "Oh, if we're going to be away, can you still hide Easter eggs?" I was like, "Emma, we're staying in a studio. It's one room."
Right. How hard are these going to be to find? Let's be honest.
You're just going to have to turn around and be like, "There's one. There's one. There's one." But I did it. And then we drove. We had brunch at Grand Floridian after that, and then after that, we drove 9 hours, 8 hours to Charlotte because it was far cheaper to fly. We had flown into Nashville early in the week and started the road trip in Nashville, but because it was Easter weekend, it was so expensive to fly from anywhere in Florida. I looked in Savannah. The cheapest place to fly home from was Charlotte.
Did you see my buddies Blake and Gwen while you were in Nashville? We're now BFFs.
No, I didn't run into them. Just another thing about traveling with a teenager, I couldn't go in anywhere. After 6 p.m., you have to be 21 to get into most of these places. And the Bluebird was closed when we went because there was some weather, like some tornadoes that came through and it disrupted like the power. And so they were closed.
Yeah, 21 unless you are Blake and Gwen's kids who were hanging out with me in a Nashville bar at 11 o'clock at night watching live music. You need to be a superstar to get your kids in.
No, actually at the Bluebird, you can bring your kids. They just can't sit at the bar. But on Broadway, all of those honky tonks, after 6 p.m., you have to be 21. So I didn't really get to go in, but we walked up and down. But yeah, so I flew back from Charlotte. We were on a 7 a.m. flight this morning, so we were up at 5 a.m. and came back, and I feel like I don't even know what day it is. So hello, everyone. Here I am. I don't know where I am, what day it is, what state I'm in.
Welcome home.
Confusion.
Thanks.
You're in a state of confusion right now.
I am in a state of confusion, and my body is also confused because The weather was gorgeous in every city we were in. We were in Nashville, we were in Asheville, North Carolina, we were in Charleston, and then we were at Disney, and the weather was gorgeous. And I stepped off this plane in New Jersey today, and it was cold and gray, and I was like, what is going on? So
Oh, yuck.
I'm in an overall state of confusion today. So
We'll try and help you through it.
thanks. I might get a little. I really might get a little emotional on this one.
Scott and I will definitely not try to confuse or sidetrack you. I swear.
I would never do that. Never.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure.
All right. So, do you need us to prompt you on what we're talking about today, or have you got this covered?
No, I mean, sure. You can go. You can introduce it, and I'll jump
Oh, yeah,
in.
sure. Talk to the guy who still can't feel half his face and can't move his mouth to do the introduction. Well, today, Amy, we are talking about Grand Floridian at Easter and the final night of Jellyrolls.
Yes, the final night of Jellyrolls. And I'll just remind everyone. I think we talked about this on the podcast when they made the announcement initially, when the rumor leaked about Jellyrolls closing. That was devastating news for me, and I had held out hope that it was just a rumor. But then when they finally announced that they were closing, it became real. And so Kathleen and Scott came with me for a little bit. I mean, the crazy thing is that I had expected that there was going to be a long line to get into Jellyrolls, and that the line would start to build early. I was thinking probably at around 4 p.m. people would start to line up because the doors were opening at 6. And Emma and I had we had driven we'd stayed in Brunswick, Georgia the night before. So we had a 3-hour ride to get to Disney.
You are the only other person I've ever met who's been to Brunswick, Georgia, the home of the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. That is the tiniest airport I have ever been in, and I have been in some tiny airports.
Well, I was not at the airport. We stayed at a Sheraton 4 Points hotel, and we didn't even we went to dinner in St. Simon's Island. So we drove about the 20 minutes from there to go to dinner and watch sunset, and that was lovely. But we had about a 3-hour drive from there to get to Disney on Saturday morning. And when we arrived, we had lunch at Beaches and Cream. And Emma had gotten new flip-flops for this trip, and we walked over from the boardwalk where we were staying to Beaches and Cream, and her feet were killing her from these new flip-flops. So afterwards, I said, you know what, we'll just take the boat back so you don't have to walk so far. And it was a good thing that we took the boat back, because it was when I was on the boat that I realized, and this was at around probably 2:15, that I realized that there was a line at Jellyrolls already. And I had planned 2:15, yeah. And I had planned to go back with Emma, and she was going to go to the pool, and I was going to go to the pool with her for an hour and then come back and get myself ready to go over to get in line at around 4. But that plan fell by the wayside, because as soon as I saw that there was a line that extended down towards the Swan and then curved back behind Boardwalk on that access road behind Boardwalk, I knew that I better get, because because my thing also I wasn't just afraid I wasn't going to get in. It was important to me that I have a seat. I mean, I'm pushing 50 here, and to be standing in line for a couple of hours and then have to stand for 7 hours at Jellyrolls was really not the way that I was looking to have my last night there. So we went back to the room, and I quickly just freshened up, and then I went and stood in line. And I mean, it was in the blazing sun. I have sunburn. I can show you my sunburn from standing in line.
Me too.
At Jellyrolls. But I have to say the line was fun. There were all of the people who lined up early were like Jellyrolls fans, people who know the musicians.
Well, I certainly hope so.
Yeah, these weren't just people that were there for the first time wanting to go to say that they had been. These were people that have been going to Jellyrolls. There was a few people in front of us. There was a guy who was probably in his 70s, and he was there with his kids who were in their late 20s, early 30s, and they had been going to Jellyrolls for a long time. So this, and actually one of the well, this was a rumor, is that one of the musicians' wife, his wife was in line too, because they weren't reserving any seats. So I guess if you wanted to get a table, you needed to get in line. And there were people that started lining up at 8 a.m. And so the line actually, it kind of went fast. And what was, Disney they brought a little cart down where they were selling water, sunscreen, chips, and umbrellas so that, people could stay shaded and hydrated. And then the guys, the piano players, they came out and they were thanking everyone for coming and taking pictures with people. And they bought dozens and dozens of donuts that they gave out to everyone in line, which was, just like a really nice, heartfelt touch, I thought. And they opened the doors at about 5:45. Kathleen and Scott came and met me in line probably at about, what, was it around 4 when you guys got there?
Like 3:30, quarter to 4.
I think
Yeah.
it was around that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, which was nice because then I was able to get offline. I was able to go get a drink. I was able to get a slice of pizza and take a minute of not being in line. And Jacqueline came, Jacqueline from the Facebook group, she came and stood with us in line for a little bit. So that was fun. And then they opened the doors at about 5:45, but we didn't really get in until about 6:30 because, as you would imagine, with so many people in line, it took a long time because you have to pay, they charge a cover fee. So everyone had to pay to get in. And by the time Kathleen, Scott, and I got into the doors, all of the seats on the floor were taken. For anybody who's been to Jellyrolls, there's a bunch of tables on the floor with actual chairs. We were able to score like 3 of the last bar stools that were there that were just like pushed off to the side. Scott grabbed those for us. But that place was packed. I mean, they reached capacity.
I saw some of the videos. It looked mobbed.
Yeah, the line still, once it had reached capacity inside, that line still reached back around the back of Boardwalk, and they then were letting people in as people were leaving. So it was packed. I mean, it was just absolutely packed. And I'm so glad that I was there. I shared on my own Facebook page just like what Jellyrolls means to me. And it's not about, it's not just about going and listening to the music, which which is great. It's fun, but that place is a place that has been a part of my Disney journey since I became an adult. Jellyrolls opened in 1996, and I went I wasn't even 21 when it opened. So when it opened, I couldn't even go in. So I think the first time I went was in 1999. I went with my sister and brother-in-law who had already been once, and we're like, we have to go. You're going to love it. And I did. I absolutely fell in love with it. On the trip that I got engaged on, my ex-husband and I went. We then got married in Disney. We had our after party there. I've gone there on girls trips. Anytime, I had a work trip, I've gone. I've dragged my coworkers on work trips to go. I've been like every member of my family has been with me. So like it's a really meaningful place, and it's kind of been like provided like a little bit of the soundtrack of my Disney trips and all of like the different things different phases and stages of my life. So, my kids are totally bummed because they always wanted to be able to go with me when they turned 21, and Allie's actually turning 21 in 10 months. And she's like, can't believe that she got so close and now they closed it. And I mean, and as they kept reminding us that night, this was not goodbye forever. We were, they're moving. So they have not yet announced where Jellyrolls is going to reopen, but I'm hoping that it's not someplace far. Like there are some rumors that it could be City Walk. I really hope it's not that far from Disney, because when you think about, a $25 Uber ride to City Walk.
And City Walk is a hike up iDrive. It's not that close.
The traffic.
Yeah. And then also the Uber drop off, like the rideshare drop off areas at Universal are not, like, they're kind of a hike from any place you want to be. And it's a $22 cover charge to get into Jellyroll. So if it's $25 Uber ride there, 25 back plus the $22 to get in, I mean, you're looking at like $75 before you even buy a drink. So, that kind of changes the dynamic of what Jellyrolls becomes, where, for me, it was always a place where at the end of the night after watching Epcot fireworks, we would leave and, walk over to Jellyrolls and then either stay at the boardwalk or the beach club. So it was always just like a stumble away from wherever I was. Now, if it needs to be
Interesting
like,
word choice.
yeah, well, it was intentional, Phil. So no, but truly, like if this is something now that I'm going to have to like plan it, really think about when I'm going to go, know that I'm going to be spending an additional $50 just to get there and back. Like it changes the dynamic of it. I'll definitely go. I just hope. I mean, my point is just like I hope it's closer. Like Kathleen had said that there's an empty movie theater in Celebration that has been sitting empty for a while. It would be great if it was as close to Celebration because it would
Perfect.
be, a $10
right
Uber
outside
ride
Main Gate.
versus, yeah, it would just be like Ubering to Saratoga Springs at that point, like
Yeah.
after Jellyrolls, which I've done. So who knows? I mean, it remains to be seen. I would imagine that they're going to be making the announcement within the next several weeks because these guys need to be working. So the longer they, don't have a place, the longer these guys go without getting paid. So
And you need to capitalize on the closing of it in order to pump up the opening of the next one. There's a very small window there.
yeah. And so and there was a guy in line with us who's, he's a regular. He's become friendly with some of the musicians. And he I just totally lost my train of thought.
Guy in line, friend of the musicians.
Yeah, what did he tell me? He told me
He
something.
proposed. He got down on one knee. So where are we going here?
Nope. No. We might just need to edit that part out and
Oh, no, it's staying. So what happened once you got inside? Tell us about the performance, Amy.
Oh, well, so the performance, again, for anybody who's been to Jellyrolls, you know that each night there are 4 pianists who play. They play 2 at a time, and then they, they'll
said
play for an
pianists,
hour.
right?
Correct. That is what I said.
Just checking.
So there will be 2 guys playing, and then they play for an hour, and then when they're done, another 2 come out and play a set, and then those guys go back, and then the first 2 guys come back. There are 8 musicians over that work at Jellyrolls right now, and so all 8 of them were there that night. And so it was a little bit different than going on a normal night where it's just the 4 guys who are it's like, taking turns. This was kind of just like a rotating thing. It almost had like a little bit of a manic quality because like I think that they were just also pumped and so excited and like the energy in the crowd was just like so high because it was packed. And Jellyrolls typically is a place that would open at 7 and it would be kind of dead between 7 and 9:30 because people are having dinner, people are at the theme parks. But around 9:30 is like when Jellyrolls would always pick up. But this place was packed from the second they opened. And so the energy was high the whole time. I mean, the energy did get a little bit higher again at like 9:30 after people had been, drinking for a couple hours. People had loosened up. They were all coming out and all singing. And there was one guy who, typically they're just playing piano, but there was one guy who was he started playing the saxophone. He played the accordion. They were playing the bongos. So it was just a totally kind of different experience because they were all there at the same time and they weren't doing 1-hour sets. They were just kind of rotating like almost every 20 minutes. And while 2 guys would be playing piano, there would be at least 3 other guys on the stage with them. And just like hyping up the crowd and just being like really engaging and really fun. And everyone was having a blast. And I think like the real emotion came probably within the last hour. They what like the Scotty Kilwine is one of the musicians. He's been there since 2002 is when he started, May 2002. And then his brother started in 2007. The rest of the guys that work there now all started after they reopened after COVID. And so Scotty is like kind of like the heart and soul of the place. Like it's clear that he is like the leader of the group, and he has his thing that he's always done since he started is he sings Rainbow Connection, he'll get up from his piano and he'll sit on his piano while the other guy plays Rainbow Connection, and he sings it, and he can do like a really good Kermit voice, and he holds a drumstick in between his hands and moves his arms to look like he's, moving like Kermit. And it's just a thing that anybody who goes knows that he does it. And so when he sat on the piano to sing it again, he got choked up and he was like, wow, this is really emotional. And at that point, like, that's when I started crying. And I pretty much did not stop crying then for the rest of the night. They wrapped it up early and they played Piano Man, which, it seemed like that was going to be their last song. And Piano Man is like their number one most requested song, as you could imagine. So they wrapped it up with that song. But then Scotty came up and he introduced each of the musicians one by one and let them each play a song of their own choice, which was really, really awesome. And then they each addressed the audience and just talked about how they found Jellyrolls, how much it meant to them. And, hearing Scotty talk was really amazing, just to hear him share what his journey had been. And then they finished the night by playing My Life by Billy Joel, which was the first song that had ever been played on the Jellyroll stage back in
There's
1996.
a ton of videos floating around of that. I've seen dozens of them in the last day.
Yeah, it was, so it was like a big full circle moment. And for somebody like me who's been going for so long, it was just, it was fun. I was texting with Derek at one point, and like I said to him, like, it just feels so dumb that this place is closing. Like, everybody here loves it. Everybody here comes here all the time, and it just feels like they're just sucking the fun out of everything. Why
I've
can't we
been
have this?
wondering, you look at the two locations that are there, and you've got Jellyrolls and you've got Atlantic City Dance Hall. Of the two, why in the world did you pull Jellyrolls? Atlantic City Dance Hall on a good night has like 15 people inside of it, and Jellyrolls starts late, but at least it's got a lively crowd and a following. Why did you pull Jellyrolls and leave Atlantic City Dance Hall just languishing there across the way?
It makes no sense. It literally makes no sense. And I had said this to Scott and Kathleen that day, or maybe the next morning. What's so great about Jellyrolls is you look around the room and the age spans probably from 21-year-olds to 70-year-olds and everything in between. And they play music that speaks to every single one of those demographics. So this is like one of like the few places, I feel like, anywhere in the world, like where you can have a venue, a music venue that is as appealing to a 21-year-old as it is to, a 21-year-old doing the Disney college program, to a 48-year-old, middle-aged mother, to a 70-year-old like retired guy, like all of us having the same amount of fun and all of us like crying the same tears when they played their last song, because we're all just going to miss it so much and miss that location, So it just, the Walt Disney Company is an entertainment company, and that was like the ultimate entertaining venue that just appealed to everybody. And so I just can't make sense of it. I really can't make sense of why they would not want to continue to have that place on Disney property. I really can't.
We'll just add that to the list of things I can't make sense of in the last 3 years. The list just keeps getting longer and longer and longer. I clearly do not understand their strategic vision, if we accept that they actually have one.
Who is Scotty's brother? I didn't know his brother.
He was the one that was pointing the back scratcher. Yeah.
That makes sense now that I I can see how they could be brothers. Okay.
Yeah. That guy is his older brother. But, I think this is a good segue to the next thing we're going to talk about, which is the Grand Floridian. And, we had talked last week before I went away that we would talk about like what, going to the Grand Floridian for Easter. And really, I feel like this is more of a conversation that is a continuation of what you just said, Phil, about like trying to make sense of the decisions that Disney makes. And I also could not make sense of, they made this announcement about this bar that they're bringing to the lobby of Grand Floridian, which was a very divisive announcement to begin with, because some people are like, why do we need a bar in the lobby? There's Enchanted Rose right upstairs. You've got the courtyard pool bar right through the back doors. Why does there need to be a lobby bar, especially removing this bird cage, which is an iconic part of the lobby? But not only are you going to spring this announcement, but you're going to spring the announcement and you're going to immediately put up construction walls.
Yeah, walls were up like 37 minutes later.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
Before
were.
Easter, which Grand Floridian, like I intentionally made these reservations for brunch at Grand Floridian for that day, even though we were staying at Boardwalk and even though I knew I was going to be going to bed late because the night before I was going to be at Jellyrolls until 2 a.m. I wanted to be at Grand Floridian on Easter because to me, when I think of the resort that says Easter the most, it's Grand Floridian. I mean, you walked in and it was like you wouldn't have even known that it was Easter because all you can see when you walk in is the construction wall. And then if you walk beyond the construction wall, yeah, you see some Easter eggs in that little cottage that they have where they're selling Easter treats. But it completely made the Easter of it all like feel like a non-event. And having I like, why did they not wait until after Easter to
I
put up those
know.
construction walls? Like, who made that decision? I just
It
don't
looks
understand.
it looks so ugly. And it's so pretty during Easter with the cottage there and all the colors, and yeah, putting those walls up now, like right before Easter, was not a good move.
You think it looks bad for Easter? Just wait till Christmas.
No gingerbread house.
I don't know how they're I don't know how they're going to fit the tree because those construction walls come out far.
Yeah,
You're assuming they're putting up a tree at this point. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. Like, who knows what's going to happen for Christmas because they barely. I mean, because they pushed. So the piano is typically more centered in the lobby. They pushed the piano up against where the elevator is on the backside of the elevator. No clue where they're fitting a tree. They're definitely not. I think somebody said they're definitely not doing the gingerbread house, right?
No, outright
Yeah.
announced that it is not happening this
Yeah.
Christmas.
So, I mean, we'll see where they put the tree. We'll see if it's the same tree or if they put up a smaller tree that's not, their typical traditional tree. I just can't make sense of that decision either. And let's talk about the decision to put up the bar. Like, how do you guys feel about that decision?
I don't know why. I mean, you have a perfectly great bar upstairs, the Enchanted Roses. I mean, I think it's one of my favorites.
I don't know why somebody thought that they needed to
Yeah,
put something there that would, like, if they're trying to bring more people somewhere, they don't need that
I don't know.
at the lobby of the Grand Floridian.
Yeah, I don't understand. The lobby's
last thing-
already busy enough.
Yeah, the last thing you need is to draw more people to the lobby of the Grand Floridian, but I don't know.
Maybe
you
that's
can't really
why.
judge it until you see it in person.
Maybe that's why. I mean, it is always busy, so why not just put something down there that people will pay for? Because people will.
I get that. And part of me says this just goes back to looking for an opportunity to monetize every square inch of that property. If there is a place where they are not making money, they need to put some revenue generating location in to do that for them. I mean, I could argue both sides of it. I don't drink, but I really don't have a problem with people grabbing a drink, hanging out at a bar. I've hung out at the bar with you guys. It doesn't bug me. I just don't think that it fits. I don't care what the theming is. I don't care what the clientele is. I don't care what the demographic is. Actually, that's a lie. I have some preconceived notions of what a bar in that lobby may do, but I'll keep those to myself until I'm proven otherwise. But when I walk into the Grand Floridian, whether I'm visiting or I'm staying there, I am overawed by the class of that location, by the ambiance, by how beautiful the birdcage is, the piano being played in the center, the beautiful chandeliers, the elevators, and you're just going to put a bar off to the side, and it just makes me think that I've walked into a Hyatt or a Marriott, and there's just a bunch of people sitting around a bar talking and having drinks, and drinks are going to be getting spilled on that beautiful carpet that's down on the floor, and it's going to extend out into where people are waiting for their rooms. It just doesn't fit. And I can judge it before it goes in there. I don't know how you could possibly theme that bar for it to fit in that location. I just don't see it happening. When you walk into Dolphin, Finn's fits there. It just does. It's a lively lobby. It's got the coffee shop across the way, and you've got the elevators and the gift shops and everything in Grand Floridian, the gift shops, the restaurants, they're all tucked off into the corners. And you've got these beautiful chairs and these beautiful tapestries and these beautiful wall hangings and a bar. If you were going to do that, do it on the second floor, bring back the orchestra, and do it right where it fits, just not in the center of the lobby. I cannot begin to contemplate why this decision made sense other than lots of people come here, let's sell them $27 drinks. That's it.
Well, and that's what I was going to say too, because I feel like, honestly, like I look to the future of all the places to put a bar, you put it at the Grand Floridian. And like Phil said, and it just, you kind of take away from the classiness of that lobby. But could this potentially be a guinea pig for other resorts to get the same thing? And that's what I'm thinking, because Phil, you said it, they want to take advantage of every square inch of every second of your vacation. And many times people show up a little early. I mean, what are people doing when they're in the lobby? A lot of people just hang out and they're waiting for their room. They're not spending any money at all. But now what better thing to do than to just walk up to the bar and now potentially get a $20 drink? So I think maybe down the road in the future, you could be seeing a lot more of this in other resorts too, if it works out for the Grand Floridian.
Well, I have a couple of thoughts. And number one is, in the Grand Floridian, the Garden View Tea Room has been sitting empty since Disney reopened after COVID. What are they doing with that space? Because if they're not going to reopen the tea room, then they could have put a bar back there, which I would have felt was less intrusive. You want to walk back there and get a bar and then walk to the lobby with it and sit and listen to the piano player? Great. Do that.
And
that
I would have mourned the loss of the high tea, but that would have been more acceptable to me than just putting it smack dab in the middle of that beautiful grandeur that is the lobby.
Exactly. While the tea room still remains empty and completely unutilized. So there's that aspect. And then there's also the aspect of, Phil, you said when you walk into Finn's, it makes sense. And you also said, like, putting a bar in the middle of the Grand Floridian makes it feel like it's like a Hyatt or a Marriott. And that's what the Dolphin is. The Dolphin is not a themed hotel. It is a hotel that has a very distinct architectural design, but it is not a themed hotel. The Grand Floridian is. And you would not walk into some Victorian mansion or, Victorian ballroom and have a bar be one of the first things you see. Honestly, what you would have is you would have somebody serving you. So I also wouldn't be opposed to if there was somebody, they have a bar for 1900 Park Fair and for Grand Floridian Cafe. They could have had somebody come out. If you wanted to sit and listen to the piano player, they could be having somebody come out from one of those bars, taking your order and bringing you beverages. But putting this thing that's going to look like some sort of half-ass bird cage that they're transforming into a bar, it feels like, again, like, when I've said that what I don't love about the Grand Floridian at the holidays is that it feels like a shopping mall. This is one more thing that makes it feel like kind of like a shopping mall, where they're just like plopping places, to your point, Phil, just to be able to get more money out of people. They're just going to put this here so that people can sit and drink and pay $20, like you said, Scott. So, and that being said, I do think that there are Disney resorts where it could work. I mean, we had a conversation where I think that the Contemporary, like that Outer Rim Lounge, stinks. It's too small. It's underwhelming. Give me a really nice bar on the, Grand Canyon Concourse, and I love that idea. But
even the Poly, go to the Grand Ceremonial House, take one of those unused corners, either back by the elevators or up by Trader Sam's, put in a very small bar. Heck, when you think about it, where the gift shop is now, that actually used to be a little a grog shop. It was a little mini liquor store in that corner. That's what it started as, along with offices, and sell lapus and a couple of small drinks out of that. And it fits the theme as long as it doesn't take over the lobby. And had you moved this bar to another part of the Floridian lobby, I actually would not object to it. There are plenty of spaces for it. It's the location of it and how it takes away from the theming. That's my issue. I just, you know, just all of the decisions together. And I don't want to go off on a tangent, but even look at what they've done in Canada. Now you've got a DVC preview center up inside the Canada Pavilion. If you had taken all of that imagination and all of that space and done something themed in a country that desperately needs it, you could have done so well with it. We were just in Vegas, 2 months ago, I guess. And my objection to that city is they just cram anything and everything into every square inch that they can, with no thematic integrity, no transitions between A and B. And the only purpose of that city is to be taking every bit of money from you everywhere you go at every possible second. And I feel like we're venturing in that direction. Theme doesn't matter. Transitions don't matter. The integrity of the location don't matter. There's an empty space right there where people aren't spending money. Figure out a way to get some change out of their pocket at all costs. That's what we're focused on. And I don't know. I feel like everything is heading in that direction. The parks, the resorts, the bars, and it doesn't feel like it's a place that's welcoming me to give me an experience. It feels like everything there now is a monetary transaction. Come through the gates, give us your money, leave, and send the next family in. And that's what it's about. And it just seems to be the path that they're taking and the theme that they're on. And it's very off-putting to me.
This was the first time that Emma has been to the boardwalk since they closed that little sundry shop off the lobby and turned it into Carousel Coffee. And when we got there and she walked in, she's like, "What the heck is this place?" And she's like, "And why is it so gray?" She was like, she hated that it was just this like gray space that had nothing in it for her really, because it's a coffee shop and she's not a coffee drinker. And then they did the same exact thing to the screen door shop down on the boardwalk. That place too, like they made everything, they just refurbished that shop and it just looks like generic gray and beige and very, very minimalist. And that is not, again, like Kathleen and Scott, we had the conversation on Sunday, and Scott, you said it perfectly. Like the boardwalk, it evokes feelings of like whimsy, and having all of these bright colors gave it a whimsical feel. Like it was like on one side of the Crescent Lake, you have Yacht and Beach Club, which are supposed to be kind of like these, kind of high end beach feel, like reminiscing of like a yacht, like literally of like a yacht club or a beach club. And then the boardwalk is supposed to be like the fun feel, like the nighttime, that fun nighttime feel that you would get at Coney Island or Atlantic City at, the turn of the century. And they're making the boardwalk, they're trying to like upscale it or something. And it's taking away from what the theming is, because what they are doing with the decor does not match what the theme of the resort is. And but the reality is like, I think the four of us are typically on the same page with that, with with the theming and not just making everything kind of look the same. But you go into some of these DVC Facebook groups and people love what they're doing. They think it's great. People love Riviera. And the reason why we don't is because we think that it lacks theming and it lacks character, because it's all white and gray and beige. And that's what they're doing at Boardwalk. And, Scott, like you said on Sunday morning, which was like a really sad thing, is that Boardwalk is like moving further and further down on your list of favorite resorts.
Right. That was our direct contract. That was our first place that we thought to buy. just for the reasons that you said. It's just one of those fun places to be. And it was different. Like, it was just different than everything else. And now when we talked, I said it all kind of started with the removal of the clown at the pool. I mean, just jokingly saying that, but looking at that decision and then moving forward to the refurb that they did, I mean, it's nice, but it just doesn't scream boardwalk. It screams half beach club and half Grand Floridian when I see the decorations and the way that they did the refurb. And then, now you add the cake bake, you're taking away Jellyrolls. Big River just sits there. I mean, who knows what they'll do with it, but I'm kind of afraid to even see what's going to happen with Big River. And I think, Jellyrolls, they were talking about, I think, was it like a jazz club or something like that, possibly going in there. But I don't know. I kind of hope they get back to the fun and quirky ways of the boardwalk instead of this like upscale mini Grand Floridian, is what I would call it.
I keep going back to in all of these decisions, and yes, it includes my beloved Rivers of America, which I feel every bit as deeply as Amy and her Jelly Rolls. You look at all of the Imagineers that came up with all of these incredible experiences from 1955 right up until 10 years ago. You look at John Hench, you look at Joe Rohde, you look at Tom K. Morris, you look at Eddie Sato, you look at Tony Baxter, all of them, these names that we know they are responsible for the things that we love and the things that have kept us coming back for years. And they all had a fundamental understanding that what makes your experience is not one attraction. It's not one sight line. It's not one ride. It's all of those intangible things that all come together to contribute to the overall ambiance and the feelings that you cannot actually put into words. Hench talked about colors. He was a master of color palettes and how certain colors were soothing and certain colors evoked excitement. And Tony Baxter talking about the transitions between Adventureland and Frontierland, and Eddie Sato and Tom Morris talking about the building of Euro Disney at the time, now Disneyland Paris, and how that entire park is just completely overwhelming from their main street to their castle and Tokyo Disneyland and Disney Sea, and the detail that Joe Rohde put into Animal Kingdom. When you're walking through Harambe, there's nothing there that's one thing that is an attraction. But when you're walking through Harambe, there's an overall feeling that you are well and truly there. It's all of those intangibles that make the entire experience that keep people coming back. And I feel like they've lost sight of that. Walking into Grand Floridian, it's not just about the bar. It's about how the bar is such a jarring juxtaposition against the rest of the lobby, and how people now, since the mid-90s, have been talking about that overwhelming feeling of walking into that lobby. And I don't think they truly understand now that just by inserting a bar, you could spoil that entire feeling with one simple change. The lobby is the same overall with the exception of the bar. But as soon as you insert that, it breaks up the entire experience and it no longer evokes the same feeling. I think the same thing will happen with Frontierland. Is Cars Land going to be awesome? Yeah, it very well may be. That attraction could be cool, but you are no longer going to have that experience. Look at old photos of Main Street with the trees and the benches. Now it's just a thoroughfare for you to walk down, take a picture, and spend money in the shops. Period. They're losing sight of that. And I say it, and I've said before that I say it jokingly, but I said it for real the other day to somebody. We are going further and further away from a theme park into an amusement park. And they charge an awful lot of money to be an amusement park.
Yeah, I think that the thing that Disney did well and was the only place that was doing it, and it's the reason why we all still go, is because they created spaces that felt like real places. You walked into Frontierland and you felt like you were in a real place. You go into Harambe and you feel like it's a real place that's been there, and that you're visiting this place that has been there for way longer than, before the park opened. And that is what Disney World is they created a place that feels like a real place that you visit over and over again because you want to return to that place that feels like a real place, compared to a place like Universal, which, they just opened Epic Universe. But when you think about Universal, The only ride that is still in existence, Universal Studios Florida opened in 1990. The only ride that is still in existence from that day is E.T. That entire park is different because Universal is an amusement park and they change their park based on what the current trends are. And I would venture to guess that in maybe 20, 30 years from now, Epic Universe might look very different than it looks today because they're going to realize at some point people aren't going to care about Super Mario Brothers, or they're not going to care about, How to Train Your Dragon or something, and they're going to replace it with whatever is new and current of that time. That is not Disney. Disney created spaces that were supposed to feel like real places that you could return to over and over again and have them remain basically untouched. They should be familiar every time you go back. And that's the nostalgia that we all talk about. That's the thing that gives us the feels, is feeling like we're returning to a place that we love, that is familiar to us. And when you change all of the familiar elements, it becomes unfamiliar and it becomes something that's unpredictable. And that's how Disney is feeling. It's like feeling like everything is unpredictable. They're just going to, any moment, they could just take away something that you loved. And, I've teased you a little bit, Phil, about the Rivers of America. But if they can get rid of Rivers of America, it's like they could do anything at this point.
Nothing else is safe. And it's funny you bring that up. 3 hours before the recording of this podcast, multiple sources are reporting that Disney is contemplating bringing The Simpsons into Hollywood studios.
I want to do the Homer Simpson dope right now, but I'm not going to.
But just engaging in the latest use of an IP that may draw people for the next 5 years until we can figure out our next plan. I mean, it may be true, it may not. But okay, here's the thing. And this goes back to what you said, Amy. If it's true, it confirms what you said. And if it's not true, it confirms the last thing you said, which is they're so unpredictable. News like this is now becoming feasible. If you had said this 3 years ago, Simpsons are coming into Hollywood studios, we would have been like, oh, okay, that's an inside the magic clickbait, no doubt about it. But they're making announcements now and people are coming up with rumors and we can't tell the difference between the two because they are so unpredictable.
Right. I mean, my knee-jerk reaction would be like, well, the Simpsons are at Universal. But to this point, it is so unpredictable. You have no idea what the heck they're going to do. So, yeah, it could be true. Because if they're going to get rid of Rivers of America, if they're going to get rid of Jellyrolls that has been there for, I can't do math right now, but 30 years, basically, they can do anything.
They're going to pull the bird cage out of the Grand Floridian lobby. That's gone. Muppets, gone.
You're sensing a theme. I feel like Disney is now sacrificing what gave you those long-term feels for a short-term financial gain. And I think it's working right now, as much as I hate to even say that, because I've never seen the parks as busy as I do now. And we all know that we live in a financially challenging, it's more challenging financially now, the world that we live in, than it ever has been before. I mean, you have to be almost a two-income family. Everything costs more money than it used to. But yet I still see people flooding those parks more than I ever have. And it might work now, but when you sacrifice the long-term feels, the long-term thing that kept people coming back year after year, I'd love to see if it's still working 20 years from now, because I'll bet it's not.
Well, it won't be, and it becomes a constant chasing your tail conundrum. If you're only doing stuff that is going to bring people in for the next 5 years, it means that 5 years from now, you need to come up with the next new thing and the next new thing and the next new thing. And that's bad enough, but Disney can't even put in a Moana walkthrough in less than 5 years. So now what are they going to do?
Well, I mean, that's how I feel about the...
Go ahead,
I was
Amy.
just going to say, that's how I feel about the resorts. It's like they jumped on this bandwagon of gray and beige being and minimalism being the current trend. Well, they're still doing that to the resorts, and that is no longer the popular trend. people are, wanting color. People want things to be, they don't want minimalism anymore. But Disney, because they decided 5 years ago that that's what they were going to do, and it takes them so long to execute anything, they are still executing a trend that is on its way out. Go ahead, Scott. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, it's okay. I was just thinking, 10 years ago, I don't know when the first time, it's been years since the first visit. And all I remember were people walking around, looking around, amazed at everything that Disney had. And now you just see people, they look down. They're looking at their phones. I see, more parents telling their kids, act like you want to be here, things like that. And I just see that future generation not having that same feeling of wanting to come back. It's not that same magical place that we thought of, that we just kept wanting to come back to. We wanted our kids to experience. I don't know, that future generation, I don't think is going to be, as willing or as wanting to go back as what we were, if this keeps up.
Yeah, but you said it yourself. 10 years ago, they were walking around, they were looking at things, they were slowly enjoying the ambiance, but you didn't say the one thing that Disney wants them doing. They weren't spending money. They were just walking around and soaking it all in.
Yeah, but they kept coming. That's what I mean, though. Like that amazement is what made them come back year after year. They
I
might not have
completely agree. I'm 1,000% on board with you, but I don't think that the current shareholders or actuaries really care about 10 years down the road. They're concerned about the bonus this year and the bonus next year, not the problems of the bonuses of people 10 years down the road.
Yep, that's why I said we'll see what happens.
It will be interesting to see, because my kids, who are now 20 and 17 years old and have been going to Disney World since they were born, they experienced Disney World by and large like the same way that I did. Yes, there were new things, but I was able to bring them and have them experience Adventureland and Frontierland and, Harambe, and bring them to see Muppet Vision 3D and, go to World Showcase and walk around. And it's by and large, they were experiencing what I experienced as a 14-year-old. And so they have nostalgia. But if Disney starts to change so much that they no longer feel nostalgic about it, are they going to be as inclined to spend their money to go to Disney and bring their kids? Because it is expensive. It's more expensive than ever to go. And yes, I'm a DVC member, and so they will always be able to use the points. But for people who are at an age like my kids' generation, who experienced Disney the way that their parents did, but are now seeing the things that they loved change, I'm curious to see, will my kids feel as strongly about bringing their kids if all of the things that they loved about Disney start to change? Because then they won't have the, I want you to experience what I experienced, because those things are going to be gone. And I see it, to bring it back to Jellyrolls, I see it with Jellyrolls. My kids knew that Jellyrolls was something that I love doing, that their father loved doing so much, and they could not wait to turn 21 to be able to do it and experience it with us. And now they will never have that opportunity. So if Disney keeps taking away the things that make them feel connected to kind of family memories, do they have any incentive to start to make new memories with their own kids in a place that they don't feel connected to?
I think that's as good a place as any to leave this conversation.
On that happy, uplifting note.
Yeah. We've had happy episodes, but I think that, granted, we are hardcore fans. We're DVC members. We're annual pass holders. Scott and Kathleen moved down there to be closer to it. Em and I have been looking at properties down there to be part-time closer to it. Maybe we don't speak for the general population. Maybe we do. But I do know that what we're saying here is becoming more and more the general undertone of true long-term fans. So there are going to be detractors. There are going to be people that say that we're old curmudgeons. We don't want anything to change. And I don't think that's true. I think we embrace change, but it needs to be change for the better. And I just don't think we interpret any of this as change for the better.
No,
Right,
we
like,
give
none of
pro- we
us were
always give
upset.
props. We give props where props are due. I mean, if they do something good, I think we're the first ones to say, we all like it. They did a good job. I mean, look at Bay Lake with the refurb that they just did. I couldn't praise that enough. The room refurbishments, the way they did the colors, the tie-ins of the Mary Blair artwork, things like that. Those are the things. I mean, sure, we're going to give props when they're deserved, but yeah, there's just a lot of things that.
Let's hope that bar doesn't change your mind about the Grand Floridian.
Listen, I was just gonna say, like, I was laughing as Phil was talking because we're talking about this being a sad episode, but I'm over here chuckling because I'm thinking to myself, I can't wait to see what kind of drinks they have on the menu. As much as I might not agree with there being a bar in the lobby, I'm still kind of like, okay.
I don't know. Yeah, I'm really hoping it doesn't ruin it. I'm really, really hoping.
Yeah, and just agreeing with you, Phil. None of us were upset when they changed the part of Animal Kingdom that was Camp Mini Mickey and built Pandora. We embraced that because that was change for the better. That was something that we thought was going to enhance that park. Even the closing of Dino Land USA, while people feel like sad and nostalgic about that, we all recognize that was kind of also like a languishing area of that park that needed new life. And so, like,
Yeah,
I'm
holding out
excited
hope on
about
that one. I don't know that I'm excited yet, but I'm certainly keeping an open mind. I'm not sitting here bemoaning the loss of Dino Land. I think it was just a kind of a disaster back there. I'm very hopeful that what they bring to bear is going to be lovely and beautiful and expand that park. I think there's plenty of places where they could get rid of older stuff and make it better. But I keep hearing this continual undercurrent on social media. Well, yeah, this ride only had a 5-minute wait. They clearly need to replace it with an e-ticket. Not everything needs to be an e-ticket. Not everything needs to be changed. Not everything needs to be moved to something new for the sake of new. If you can plus it, if you can do better, if you can update it, by all means, do it. But don't just change something for the sake of change and leave us with something that was lesser than before. Splash Mountain.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of reactivity happening because of Epic Universe, I think. And I just think Disney needs to stop being reactive and just remember what makes them have a long-term success. Like that, I think that is the key. It's like they need to be focusing on longevity because that is where their success is.
Where are they going to put Simpsons at in Hollywood Studios?
Hopefully nowhere.
Like I said, it could be a rumor, but we have reached the point where it is a completely feasible rumor. That's just how upside down, topsy-turvy world things have become.
They're going to get rid of the Tower of Terror and call it Marge Simpson's Tower of Hair.
Really?
All right, does that wrap it up, guys?
Wrap it up.
You're done.
All right. Well, it's been a while since we had one of these group therapy episodes, so we were due for one. We thank everyone for listening along. I'd love to hear the feedback on the page on this one. Are you happy with what's happened? Are you not happy with what's happened? What do you think about all this, especially the bar at Grand Floridian? In addition to that, if you could run over to Apple Podcasts, give us a 5-star review. Even if you don't agree with us, frankly, we'd really appreciate the 5-star review. We would love that. Amy?
And you can find us on Facebook at DVC Clubhouse. We're also on TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram. And until next time, we'll DVC you real soon.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.
See you guys.
And so our journey comes to an end.
Oh, no, please, can't we go back to page 1 and do it all over again?
We started this thing together, and that's how we'll finish it.
Because that, my friends, is where the magic lives.